So we're now starting a completely new section in Python programming, which is control flows. And just previously, as a reminder, we looked at native data types, which is the integer, the float, the string, and a boolean. And then we also looked at collections, which were lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. So with these control flows, we're now going to be able to use our native data types and also our collections, because we will be able to loop through them. We'll be able to do for statements and if statements and so forth. So we'll see how that works. Just like an overview, I guess, of everything that we're going to go through, these 8 key parts, and actually one of them is a new one, which is the match statement. We'll talk about that too. But we're going to go through these one by one. We're going to first look at the while statement, and this basically runs a piece of a block of code until some kind of criteria is satisfied, and then it stops. Otherwise, it just keeps on running forever. Then we have an if statement, and that checks if something is true, and if it is true, then it will execute something, and if it's not true, then we can either pass through or try to do something else. Then there is the for statement, and the for statement is probably a little bit safer than the while statement, in the sense that it does actually it iterates through a loop or a list or something or a range, and it does stop at the end, so it's finite, whereas the while statement could be infinite. The while statement could run forever. The loop statement, we can define as a certain limit to how it runs, how many times we do an iteration. Then we have the range function. This is an extremely useful function in Python. It kind of like saves us, sort of like when we use a for statement, we can put the range in there and sort of like limit ourselves, or say what that range is, how many times, like what steps we're going to do and how far we're going to go. So that's a very useful function. We also have break and continue clauses, and they are things that go inside these while and for statements, so that we could effectively break out earlier if we wanted to. And is also the else clause, so that goes that might go on loops. And also inside if statements, we could have if and else if statements, so we'll have a look at those. The pass statements as well, which you've kind of like seen in previous code that's been done, where it's effectively a placeholder, so we'll just show those too. Then this new match statement, this is something that's new in Python versions 3.1 and above, and I believe that was in 2021, middle of 2021, when the match statement came out. The match statement does exist in many other functions, in many other programming languages. I'm using it in VBA like a decade ago, if not more. And it was introduced into Python, although the reason why it never came into Python before is the reality is you don't need it. That was the argument, but then it was brought in maybe for consistency, to bring it in line with other languages possibly. And finally, but probably this is kind of like the most important part, or certainly a humongous part of all coding, is defining of functions, and Python has its own way of defining of functions. And when we previously looked at methods, they were effectively their functions that live inside of classes. We haven't yet come to classes, but these methods, they started with this definition thing, and we just took it, we just used the name of them, and we used them sort of like as a convenience for ourselves, without kind of like knowing where they came from. The Python effectively gave them to us, and we used these very convenient things. But what we are going to see is that we can also now build these very convenient things for ourselves to use them for other people. So that's just the generics and the overview of control flows, and we will move into this section and take a look at it deeper.